I welcome you all to another webinar from Philips Lighting University. And today's webinar is titled Lighting University Modulating Light in Architectural Space. And today's webinar will be presented to you by Sanjay Mohe from Mindspace Architects India.
Well, again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Sanjay Mohe speaking from Bangalore, India. And today I'm going to talk about modulation of light in architectural space. I hope you can hear me, right? Yeah. So I just start with this presentation with this slide. This is a ceremony which happens in Banaras. Banaras is called as City of Lights. And this happens on the banks of River Ganges. And there's a ceremony where these lamps are floated in water. And what is amazing about it is the kind of energy it generates because of the water and light or the fire, the kind of contrast it generates. And that's what is amazing about it. And it's not just that lamps, but the entire banks of the river get illuminated with these lights. And this festivity just goes across. And you will find this celebration which happens along these whole plains of water with the breeze flowing in, the fire, the light, the smoke, the smell, and the entire celebration which happens along that entire plain is something which is mind-boggling and something which is worth celebrating. So we in India have these ceremonies where we celebrate light, and it happens in different festivals. There's a festival of light which is called Diwali. It is going to happen just after a couple of days. There is a festival where we celebrate colors, and that again is an amazing thing. We have architecture to celebrate light. So this is called Sheesh Mahal, which is a glass palace kind of thing. And in this, when you take a lamp inside and when you move that lamp, the kind of movement and the kind of energy this whole space generates, it's something amazing to celebrate the light. And I compare it with this pomegranate, which has a kind of a rustic skin outside, but when you open it and see inside, it is like crystals which sort of open it and really create a very vibrating kind of a feeling. We have music to celebrate light. I mean, the change of light. In the morning, we have different ragas. As the light changes in the afternoon, there are different ragas. In the evening, there are different ragas. So we have this celebration happening in terms of music as well. And when the light changes, when the transition happens in the morning from dark to light, and again in the evening when it changes from light to darkness, that's always a most colorful moment. You have these very, very colorful lights which happen. And that is again a moment where it connects with the emotions, and it is proved that the people who are mentally stressed, they sort of they find very stressed in the evening when this change of light happens. Now, so there is a connect between the change of light quality and the emotions. And if you ask me a question, the kind of most memorable light I would have seen in my life, I would always go back to nature, and I would look at these clouds where you have the light coming through the clouds. You have trees, and through these branches the light comes through the leaves, the way kind of filtered light coming through. And these rice fields, which is very common in the outskirts in India. And when you see them across the light and along the light, the kind of change which happens, you see a kind of the same green, but the kind of perception that you get is totally different when you see it across the light. The lightning, again, it has an amazing quality. The fog. And this fog has quite an incredible quality because you have a medium. where the light gets reflected, and then because of that, you see these different gradations of color happening, and that's where the depth gets accentuated. You feel the sense of depth because of that fog. And what happens is, at a time, that whole fog gets cleared, and suddenly you see everything, the entire scenario becomes extremely clear, and then again next moment it is gone. So it's like watching a movie, something opening up, closing up, opening up, and that's something which is quite incredible to watch. Then we have moonlight, which is again amazing thing, the kind of crisp shadows and sharp shadows that you get on the full moon night, and that's something which is that kind of light, which is again great to celebrate. And probably that's the reason most of our festivals are always coinciding with either a full moon night or in a new moon night. And new moon night is where you have a darkness. So again, you light up a lamp and put it in the dark, and you celebrate the light. So you always have that kind of a connection. And what is amazing about this light in nature is something which keeps changing all the time. Now, if you take the case of either fire or water, it's always changing. Every moment it is changing. And if you want to take a picture, same picture again, you will never be able to get it, because every moment, every second it is different. And you can't possess it because you can't hold on to it. And that's the reason it becomes more precious. And that's what you want to sort of look at it again and again. So that's the reason when I want to see a sunset, I would have seen it thousands of times in my life, but I would again want to stop over, look at it one more time and enjoy it, and that's because you can't hold on to it. You cannot possess it. So, so connecting emotions with with architecture is something which is an interesting idea. And you always wonder that the kind of light in nature that we saw, all these images, is it possible to really capture that in architectural space and celebrate that space? And can you really connect it with the emotions? And on the stage, people have managed to do it, and they have done it very, very successfully. But they do it with artificial light. They do it in a controlled environment. In an architectural space, you try to do it with natural light, and that's why it becomes most difficult. So connecting light with emotions, and that is something which is a fun part of architecture. And throughout your life as an architect, you try to create a space, link it with the light, and link it with the emotions, and put them across a spine and weave a story. And the way the sequence unfolds, the story unfolds in a different way. And you change the sequence, the story changes. And you try to sort of master that whole idea of incorporating light, space, and emotions, and that's what is a real fun in architecture. Now, I'll give one example of a hospice that we had designed, and this hospice is for terminally ill patients. And the unfortunate part of this is the occupants here, they spend last few days of their life, or probably days or months, in this building. So what we were trying to do is open the building towards the eastern rising sun and try to sort of blanket towards the western side. One of the reasons of blanking the western side is to stop the radiation of the western sun coming in. But for obvious reasons, we wanted these occupants to look at the morning sun and not the setting sun. So this whole axis that you see, it opens towards the east, and you see the rising sun setting in these verandas of the hospice. And then this is how the whole ambience looks like. But one more thing we were trying to achieve here is, when these patients are sleeping in the ward on the bed and looking at the ceiling with probably the fan moving, what we wanted is the reflection from this water, which will reflect onto the ceiling, and you will see these moving images of water, moving reflections of water onto the ceiling, and you have something to look at rather than looking at just the fan moving above. So this is what happened, and this water has a amazing quality that it could be absolutely calm and quiet and have a very tranquil kind of atmosphere. At the same time, there is there's a huge fountain in the middle and it becomes extremely turbulent. So you have this both the qualities of water, and effectively the light quality also changes. But over the time, we are becoming more and more visual because we keep playing computer games, we keep working on the monitors, looking at the TV. So most of our time goes in looking at these monitors, and thereby most of the time we are becoming more and more visual, and so is the architecture. We tend to take pictures and judge the quality of architecture, and the moment you take a picture, remove it from the context, and then look at it, you are actually disconnecting it from the reality. You don't know whether that space is hot or cold, whether it is smelly, whether it is there is a breeze. Uh, you know, so you are an outsider when you are judging, and that's not a correct way of judging architecture. The same way when you are sitting in an office space and probably working with 300 lux of light, there is a. I always feel that there is a fun watching a cloud passing by and the light changing, and that's the only way you connect with nature, and you actually feel the change of the nature happening, and that's extremely important for a person to happen. And you always feel disconnected when you go for an afternoon movie and you come out of theater. You always feel disconnected because disoriented kind of thing, and that's the reason you are that whole cycle, the time cycle, you sort of get disconnected with that, and that's the reason you have to have a connect with the nature all the time. Now these are two images of Michelangelo's David, and this is something which I always look at. And the amazing thing about these images is just by changing the light source, the entire expression on the face changes. Uh, the entire emotional quality of the face changes. And that is the greatness of Michelangelo, the craftsmanship, the um, and we are gifted with, or we are blessed with this change of light source, which happens with mathematical precisions from morning to evening, and uh, from morning to evening, and from January to December, and because of because of that change, we have this ability to uh, create those kind of emotions within the space, changing the light quality. So you know that you will never be able to come anywhere closer to Michelangelo's creation, but if you keep that image in mind and start working with the spaces, at least you have something to look at and set up some uh, high standards. So what you do in the process, you take a cube, you start puncturing it, and you start bringing light into it, and you try to bring in the right amount of light for the right kind of activity that you are trying to work with. So so you bring in the light source within the space, but when you bring in the light is the energy. So the whole place gets heated up. So that's where the idea of sustainability comes in. You studying the studying the solar charts and try to see how and what time of the day the sun would come in, and you start working with these different sections, and when you have these different section, you try to modulate the light, whether it is a five-storied building or 10-storied building. You will try to create these sections so that the natural light would come right into the heart of the building. um, we believe that as long as there is a natural light outside, we have to find some way of bringing it inside as much as possible. So that is about the sustainability, and that's the reason you try to work with these kind of different sections and try to see that somehow you bring in the natural light inside. But as I said, when you are bringing natural light, the heat would also come in. And in the tropics, like in India, we have a problem of the Western sun, which is which is coming into saying the eastern sun is not too much of a problem, right? It's in the morning, the temperature is not too hot, but after 3 o'clock onwards, it really becomes hot. And that's where the western sun is something which becomes a big problem. So in this building, which is in Hyderabad, what we were trying to do is on the western side, we were trying to create these blank walls and take the light through the skylights from these gaps, which brings it into this space. So in the process, you have this entire project with these series of planes which are creating creating this barrier for the western sun through different layers, and from the outside the layers look like this. So you have a western sun which gets blocked, and through these gaps the light comes in, which is a reflected light. Also the air comes in through that. This is a naturally ventilated building. So the way you see is you have these pockets which bring in bright light in, and then you have a diffuse light which comes in. So you play with the light, the darkness, and the light, and then you start creating these kind of variations within this space. And at the same time, you are tackling the idea of not allowing the space to get heated up. So this is one more sample. Now this was a library. Again, we were trying to stop the eastern and western light to come in, and we were trying to get a reflected sunlight into the thing. So you don't get a direct sunlight coming in. You try to diffuse the light, reflect it, and try to spread it across into the space. There are different tricks that you try to play with. This is one more project which is getting constructed now. Titan Corporate Office, where there is a huge western radiation. But what we are trying to do there is create a kind of a screen, which is a green wall, and create a buffer for the western sun to get stopped, and then the filtered light comes in, and the breeze also comes through from the western side. So by doing this, you have this green wall, and at the same time, you get to see this filtered light through this greenery coming into the main spine, which is quite a nice idea to play with. This one of the professors from JNC had come to our office, and he had shown us this slide. This is a nighttime shot of an entire globe with a moving camera. As the darkness comes in, the camera moves and captures the entire global image. And his observation was the brightest spots are those which are the most populated countries and the most developed countries. That's where you see maximum brightness. And the areas which are dark are not so developed. But what he was saying is there will be a time when we will be able to manage the light effectively. There won't be unnecessarily uplighters. There won't be a wastage of light. And he says, as and when we know how to handle the light, the developed countries will be the darkest spots, and probably the whole scenario, whole this image will become like a mirror image. And that I thought was a quite amazing observation. Now, the light is a mathematics, because you have these solar clocks, and where you exactly know with mathematical precision how and when the light will fall on a particular day at a particular time. And this is one of the examples of Abu Simbel Temple, which was done in mid-60s, where the Aswan Dam was getting built, and this entire temple was going underwater. It was a UNESCO project where the entire this rock cut cave was lifted up and kept positioned above the high flood level. So in this particular project, one interesting thing happened, that one particular day in a year, this is the entire rock cut temple, and there are statues of Pharaoh at the end of that entire spine. And on one particular day in a year, the natural light goes and illuminates the figure of the Pharaoh, and which is supposed to be the birth date of Pharaoh. And when this project was commissioned by UNESCO, and they said that when this project gets repositioned at the upper level, the light has to come on that particular day and enter that sanctum, that sanctorium, which is the last chamber. And this was finally done because the one person I knew, he worked on this project, and then they said when that light came in, they had a big party and celebration. But this is absolutely mathematics. I mean, if you just follow the same axis, same orientation, the light would come on that particular day at that particular time. So it's mathematics and lighting. And we were doing one temple in Bangalore, and we wanted the light to come and fall onto the shrine on a particular day at a particular time. So we did that, and that light comes. But what where we went wrong is to be able to celebrate the light, we had to create a darkness around this, and that we didn't do. And that's something which happened in that Abu Simbel temple, because you have that darkness, and then you see the value of that light source, which gets right into the middle, which we missed out that point, which and slowly this is how you learn, through doing mistakes, and you keep correcting yourself all the time. So uh, this is the form of the temple, which takes the traditional form but kind of creates a variation into it, and the light comes into the space uh, through these different skylights, and you see different kind of ambience. Now this is one installation, and this is actually done by a British team. Uh, this is called One Day Poem Pavilion by Jeon Song, and what it actually does is it has this kind of abstract form, but through these perforations, the sunlight casts a shadow, and it actually completes the poem from morning to evening. And children see that, learn this, so they learn the way sun moves, they learn the way the shadows are cast, and then in the process they learn literature as well. And I thought it's a brilliant idea, and this is something which you really would like to sort of have these kind of installations, especially in the schools. Um, this is one of these pavilions in a temple in um, Virupaksha temple, which is the thing about a pinhole camera, and it kind of reverses the whole thing. Um, this is John Newell's building, which is called Arab Institute, and this is one of probably most well-known examples, where you have control on the light, and you have these different discs which react to the light, and then they enclose and open up depending on the intensity of the light. And that's where you sort of have an intelligent skin happening, and you have now different intelligent skins which are happening across. There are different examples of it, and slowly it will become easier for most of us to handle the light more effectively. But I feel it is more important to use the common sense, and you have to solve the problem by design, rather than using technology. Technology should be the second option. First, you try to design the way I was talking about, how do you really blank the western side and reflect the light and bring. And the second level is to use technology, because especially in developing countries, there are problems of resources, and you have to really find out how do you really save on to the resources. Now, this is one of the projects that we did in Bangalore, and this is like a cube within cube. You have or a room within room, and we have these operable lures which are happening across, and you can control the light through these operable lures, and it's like this is almost like a magic box kind of thing, where you see these various changes of light happening across the day, across the year, and you have a choice of closing the lures or opening the lures, or if you want, you can totally shut it and then make it totally dark. So it's almost like being a child. You can play with this light. You can open it, you can close it, And all these things we learn traditionally through some of these marketplaces. This is in Goa, in some of these marketplaces where you get this brilliant filtered light coming through. And these are even some of the other marketplaces. And off late, they are becoming more and more colorful because they started using some of these plastic sheets and all. So you learn to handle light. You learn to you learn through observation. How do you really take it into the architectural space? And traditionally, we have been very, very sensitive to handling the light, like these screens or jalis, especially in the Mughal architecture, where these screens are so brilliant that they are almost transparent when you look from inside to outside. But when you look from the outside to inside, you hardly see anything. But at the same time, it allows the breeze to get through, so it breathes. It's not like a glass. And so you have so many examples of these screens. So traditionally we have been experts in modulating light in terms of handling light. And one of the best examples is the South Indian temples, which happens layers by layers. You go from one layer to another to the third, and finally you go into the innermost chamber, which is actually the smallest and the darkest chamber. But this whole transition happens from outside to inside. First you remove the shoes, and then you touch Mother Earth, and you sensitize your skin. Then you ring a bell, and you sensitize your ears. Then you offer flowers, and you sensitize your nose, and have you have a holy water, and you sensitize your tongue. So in the process, you are actually sensitizing every element, every part of your body, and you go from one layer to another, from one to the next. And as you walk through, the light quality changes, the the sound changes, because you have very noisy atmosphere outside. As you come in, it starts becoming quieter and quieter. The smell changes. You have dust smelly thing outside. It becomes more flowers smelling inside. So essence, as the density of the structure changes, the temperature becomes cooler, and the light becomes darker and darker until you go to this innermost chamber, which is, because of that darkness, it's a sense of infinity. And that's where you realize the importance of this small light flame. And many times you realize it's not about the lux level. It's about understanding the darkness and the light, because your eyes are intelligent enough to adjust to the ambient light. And after a point, you begin to see everything clearly for no reason, and then you start enjoying that darkness, and then that the kind of images that you see in response to that flame. And that's what you see in a lot of these traditional houses, where the ray of light becomes important. But if you see today's scenario, most of our cities are becoming more and more transparent. They are becoming more and more reflective. And what are they reflecting? Probably the neighboring structure, or probably one cloud passing by. But in the process, we are losing that presence of that light, that ray of light. And in order to preserve that ray of light, you have to have a proper enclosure around it to preserve that serenity of that light. And that's what is important. So if you look at these Louis Kahn's statement, he says that the sun never knew how wonderful it was until it fell on the wall of a building. And that's a wonderful statement. And for that to happen, you have to have a surface. You have to modulate the surface to celebrate the light. And for that, it doesn't have to be actually the surface. It can also be a smoke. The way what we saw in some of the initial images of Banaras, where that smoke or even the fog, what we saw, you need to have a medium. You have to have a medium to celebrate the light. So in architectural space, what we started doing initially, most of our buildings, you would see the skylight, which used to be a little away from the edge of the wall. It used to be in the center. But slowly we realized that to celebrate the light has to fall onto the wall. So most of our building of late have these kind of a light source which happens along the wall, and this whole scene keeps changing from morning to evening. And that's what makes architecture talk. This is what you communicate architecture through light, and you celebrate it. Now, these are images of one of these Louis Kahn synagogue, and he talks about light bottles. And I thought it's an amazing idea, the idea of bottling the light. And then he makes sketches of it to celebrate that light coming in. And these are some of the sketches. But seeing that, I had never visualized the quality of light till we saw these simulated images, which were the renderings which were done later. And when you see that, you know what is that bottling of light is, and that's quite amazing. And then in the next synagogue that he designed, he takes it again to different level and starts reflecting off this chamfered planes, and that again creates because each chamfer generates a different quality of light, and it sort of starts reflecting in a different direction, and that ambience is something different. But Stephen Hall takes this to again a different level, where where he this is the chapel of Ignatius. He calls it seven bottles within a stone box, and he puts these colored kind of he calls it bottles, but these are the sources of lights which come in. But what they do internally is quite amazing, because you have the wall which is facing outside has a color, and the reflected colored light falls onto the inner wall, and thereby you are creating these the shades of light. It varies from white to blue or from white to green, and that's what creates that amazing ambience within the space. And this is really a skill how you can handle the light. And this image really shows that phenomena, because this happened in one of these traditional houses, where this lady just opens up this sari, which is one of these cloths, and the moment that happens, that entire quality of light changes within this space. You have this reflected light falling within this. So you have to learn how to reflect light. And it's almost like doing a photography. You sort of have these reflectors positioned at the right places. And in architectural space, you try to create spaces which reflect the light, and the materials which absorb light. So in the process, you start playing with the materials. Those are capable of reflecting, those which are capable of not reflecting, and you start creating that that ambience. That you start creating these variations within the space to generate that quality and play with that. This is Antonio Gaudi's Sagrada Familia, which got over a few years back. And what it does is, again, uses the stained glass, which is a kind of regular stained glass, but the number of colored glasses used of a particular color used in that particular panel varies, and the kind of, because of that, the light gets reflected onto the ceiling, has this incredible quality, and that's something which is worth learning about, worth studying about. We were trying to use that in one of the projects which is happening in Bangalore, where we are trying to create some of these screens which are translucent, and we wanted to use that subtle color in the skylight, extremely subtle, but as the sun moves, that those colors would bring in a different character into that atrium space. Now, there are different climatic zones in India, and it changes from northern India to southern India. And this is Rajasthan, which is hot, dry zone. And this is full of deserts around. So you get these winds which carry a lot of dust along with that. So most of these houses have inner courtyards, which are protected. And you have these blank walls, heavily textured with colors. So your sensitivity to the light changes depending on where you are building. So compared to Rajasthan, which is hot, dry climate in the northern part of India, we have the southern part of India, which is called Kerala. This is hot, humid climate. And here the entire response to architecture changes, and hence the sensitivity to handle the light also changes. And there you will find the light getting reflected off the ground and brought in as a very subtle diffuse light which spreads uniformly into that space. So it's much more quieter, and when you are standing here, you are not looking at a harsh light coming from the top, but you are looking at a green, which is, this being a humid area, Kerala, it's an extremely green zone. So you see a lot of greenery around, and you see this modulation of light. What happens inside? It's a very, very subtle, soothing light. And this is one more example. Uh, this was quite a remarkable experience for me, because we saw these roofs which were close to the water, almost about 2 feet away from the water, and I'll show the. So this is the situation. You have the roofs coming as close to that water, and within this gap, some places this gap varies, but within that small gap, the light gets reflected and comes into this space. And when it comes into that space, uh, it's a very different kind of light, because we are always used to seeing the light coming from the top, and we always, even when you look at our face, you expect the shadow of the eyebrows to fall down onto the eyes, uh, or the projected nose. You expect the shadow to fall, but when the light source reverses, when it comes from below, even the face starts looking different. So hence this architectural space, uh, here, when the light source comes from below, it begins to look very different. And when the sun source changes, this entire space becomes extremely different. You know, that you start seeing these waves, and it's like a movement in the space, and that's the magic of the light, which just by changing the source of the light, the entire scenario changes. Now, this is in Cambodia, and you have, they lift up the floors mainly because of the climatic reasons. You want the water to flow below, but because of this hot humid thing, they want the breeze to come from the floor as well. So you have these perforated floors, and you have the same kind of light source which is coming from below, and that looks beautiful actually. That the kind of light, you when you see it coming from the floor, that too natural light, it has amazing quality. And then you have light in these Gothic cathedrals, these huge volumes, the reverberations, the silhouette, the cruciform as a silhouette, and the whole ambience has a kind of a very mystic, godly quality to it. And then we had gone and seen Santa Sofia, and this is quite a remarkable experience, because Louis Kahn calls it as he calls it as one of the greatest rooms. But this ambience is so powerful. I mean, it sort of represents the whole cosmos. Um, Now there is an example of Corbusier's chapel, and here what he does is, there's so much written about it, about the light which comes into this, but what he talks about is this gap which happens. He lifts the roof by about 4 inches, about 100 mm, and he writes somewhere that this crack of 100 mm will amaze. So he takes so much pride in just lifting that roof, and that creates that one line of light which comes in. And you find this happening in some of the traditional temples. You have these clear story windows, and they light up these pockets. And something similar you see in Dhaka project by Louis Kahn. You have the same kind of light which is coming in, which is kind of lifting up and separating this whole mass. So there's a lot to learn from, if you keep observing these things. And this is Tadawando's chapel, where he takes this cube, makes these two cuts, and brings in the light, and probably creates one of the most exciting chapels, where the cruciform itself is a light. There is another example of Louis Barragan's chapel, where what he does is he puts this cruciform, which is not in the axis where you pray. So you pray in this axis, but this cruciform is on the left hand side, left side when you are praying. The shadow of the cruciform falls onto this altar wall, and you are actually praying at a shadow. And which is the amazing idea, because it has a mystic quality. It is much more larger. It has a godly kind of a feeling to it. So just by playing with this light and shadow, you are generating a very different kind of a light quality. And these masters have have played with these different kind of ideas and always sort of taken it to the next level. I like this idea of framing the light, framing the sky, and probably seeing this movement of clouds which is happening through the frame. And this is one of the projects which we are doing in Bangalore again, where you sort of modulate this entire section in such a way that you create the visual axis all the way across, where you look at the sky as you enter the building, and that relationship, the sky changes as you keep walking up until you come right up to the top. So it is about creating a darkness around the object which is in bright light. So the skill of a designer is to create this darkness, and this is the old idea. This happens in Taj Mahal, and you'll find it happening in so many places. But the skill of the designer is to create the depth of darkness, and by creating that depth of darkness, you are giving importance to the object in light. So you learn to do that. We have done it in so many places where this is in one of the libraries where the similar thing happens. But this is in Ahmedabad where you have, this takes this idea to the next level where you create series of light and shade frames, and it continuously sort of keeps happening one after another. And this can happen predominantly in the tropics, because in the West, the sun is more horizontal. So in the West, you are more used to light coming horizontally and casting these kind of shadows, horizontal shadows onto the wall. But in the tropics, we are more used to the sunlight coming from the top. So you have sharp shadows fallen onto the ground, and thereby you start creating these variation of light and shade and light and shade. And this is what you try to exploit it further in all these different projects. This I will just go through fast. Yeah. So in the process, you are looking at these sections where you are creating a place where you create a darkness, you create a light, you create a darkness, you create a light, you create a darkness, create a light. So you position these skylights in such a way that light doesn't fall here, then it falls here, it doesn't fall here, it falls here, doesn't fall here, and falls here. So in the process, you start learning to position these skylights in the entire sequence. Thereby, you are creating these whole shades of and this is another project where you try to take the same idea where you are creating a dark wall with a skylight, and then you are creating a bright spot, and position this same space as a contrast to this kind of a vibrant shadows. So you have a possibility of very, very vibrant shadows. You have a possibility of very subtle variation in the shadows. I was listening to one of the lectures by Osho, Rajneesh, and he keeps talking about he was talking about a Buddha, and he talks about a godly man who was an atheist, the presence of absence, sound of silence, and these are all kind of contrasting words, and that creates a lot of energy. And I said, how can you really create that in architecture? So what we did is we created a black cube, and we created a black cube with a light around, and a yellow cube with a light within, and positioned them across the spine. This is one spine. Here it becomes slightly more compact, and you sort of try to look at this black cube against that yellow cube, which is across the spine, and the same thing happens in the other axis. You see the yellow cube positioned against the black cube. There is something about translucency as well, and you sort of like to use this translucency. You like to use this silhouettes, and there is a kind of a different fun when you are looking at a silhouettes, because when you have these lights with these edges lit up, the similar kind of a scenario when you have the source coming from, it's like a silver lining to these each step. And whenever you design this in the plan, and when you look at this, you know that this is the kind of light you are going to get. You are going to get these dark lines, and you are going to get this bright. and that gives that extra dimension to the architectural space. There's something about the movement of light, and I always get fascinated by these puppets which keep moving. And when I had just joined architecture, and our professors used to talk so much about light, and then I had seen one of these movies where it was a morning shot where through this large gateway, um, the one of these actors walks into there is one small gate. There's not an image from that movie, but there's a smaller gate through which one person comes in. The entire morning light comes in, then he closes it, and then again he opens the larger gate. Again the light comes in, again he closes. So it's like opening and closing, releasing light, holding light. And I thought it's like a magic. And can you really do it in architectural space? And you either do it when you move the object, or you move yourself and then change that, feel that change happening in the light. So in some of these situations where you walk in from there and walk through this whole space and go through, and you see this entire unfolding of the space and light, which is happening, which is a very dramatic thing. Again, that change of light, we have tried to do it in some of the projects. But I was watching uh, one of these National Geographic channels, and looking at these eyes, and then you see this eye socket, and then you see the rim around it, and the way it changes, it actually creates so much of variation. And we thought, why can't you use it as an object? And we started designing this window which keeps moving along the rim, and as it moves in, you have a possibility of getting direct light into the space, or you avoid the light coming in, or you look at the side and then you try to change it. So you have a situation where the entire facade changes as you. So it is a more dynamic facade. It's a very simple way of modulating it. So you learn how to position the light. If it is normal at a window level, there is one kind of a ambience. When you lift it up to the higher level, it is slightly different. And when you take it from the top, it is totally different. So over the time, you sort of find out the ways of placing it, more, learning the spread, and we make for every project we try to simulate that. Earlier we used to do it manually. Now you have so many softwares which can tell you on which particular day throughout the year how the light quality changes, and then you study it, and when it actually happens, it's a fun to look at it, and then really see that change. It's like movement in the space. You almost feel that these rings are moving when you see this change of light which is happening. We were trying to create this one path of movement. This is called origin discovery. So we were trying to create a path of discovery across, and as you walk across the whole space, it sort of opens up. There is a focal point, then it changes, the light quality changes, and it opens into the large space. And the same space, when you look at it in the night, the pockets which are bringing natural light start bringing in artificial light, and you render the whole space with a similar color as if it is a rock cut kind of architecture, everything carved out of one space, one material, and you have this kind of ambience happening. This is one of my favorites painting by M.F. Hussain, famous Indian painter, and this is about Mother Teresa. And he paints these blue lines, and you wonder how can you really capture that power of that line in architectural space. And you see this Peter Zumthor's bath, and you see this light which is coming, which is again about 100 mm wide or 150 mm wide. The kind of ambience it creates and the kind of reflection it generates, it's extremely powerful. And we wanted to celebrate that ray of light, and especially with the kids when they play with this light. When we were doing this kindergarten, we thought we will create these slits in the form, and you have these slits with a sheet of light coming in, and imagine the kids jumping in and out of that sheet of light, and that's a great fun to have that happening. There is something about these perforations of jalis and screens, which are becoming very popular in contemporary architecture. And we also try to use it, but there's a different skill involved when you play with it. You actually want to know the exact transparency of this, translucency of this from the overlapping, how much visibility would happen, and then you start getting some of these reflections. And then it happens in the restaurant which is attached to that. In this project, we were again. This part is done by Mr. Doshi, famous Indian architect, and we were trying to do extension to this building. So we were trying to create this spine against that pergola, and we started working with this and started seeing whether these cubes can be suspended from different levels, which bring in light quality in different from different locations. So you have these cubes happening from above, from side, from below, and the kind of light changes. And on the western side, we knew this light would come in the evening. This cube, this meeting room behaves almost like a prism, which reflects the light into the space. And then the whole scenario, this is again controlling natural lights within the classrooms. And this is the last project. This is the monument. This is a memorial which we did for one of our clients. He passed away recently. He started his whole career as a son of a farmer in one of these small villages, and he happened to become one of the biggest entrepreneurs. Eventually, setting up lot of philanthropic works and big pharma company he formed. So this was a memorial for that. So I won't get into the details of that. But what we were trying to do is use this reflective element, which is a water, and which is a black color water, which goes across as a spine. With that is showing that presence of absence, all that void which happens at the end where the relics are buried at that corner. So you have this whole spine, and using that reflective quality of water and the light to generate that ambience. That's the void looking back at the entry, and it's almost like a non-building, but the way it changes in the night, the whole light, the artificial light. And the idea was from this samadhi, as you call it, the lights become very, very small, the way his life began, and they become more and more till they meet the sky and actually become stars at the end. So this was a simulated image, and then eventually when it happened, it has happened like this, and this is what it looks like now. So in the process, whether it is a house or institution or a school or a temple, we try to celebrate light, but we always try to compare it with the masters. Like I kept on talking about Louis Kahn as the master in handling the light. So whatever we do, we sort of try to see how we can learn, how we can connect that light with the emotion and celebrate that space and celebrate the light. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for listening.